There is a quiet tax move wealthy Americans use every single year without flinching. It is legal, it is documented, and it is hiding inside the United States tax code. Most middle-class earners have never heard of it, and that silence is not accidental. It is called the Backdoor Roth, and it changes how money compounds for decades. If you have ever felt behind on retirement, this is the kind of move that quietly closes gaps. Not because it is magical, but because it removes a tax drag most people carry forever. You are not behind because you are lazy or careless or bad with money in some hidden way. You are behind because nobody actually taught you how the wealthy structure their accounts. Schools teach budgeting sometimes, but they almost never teach legal tax positioning at all. So you end up paying full tax on every dollar every year without ever questioning it. Meanwhile, higher earners are quietly routing money into accounts that grow completely tax-free. That difference, repeated over 30 years, is not small. It is generational in scale. Today you are going to understand the Backdoor Roth in plain spoken English, no jargon. You will see why it exists, who it is for, and how it actually works in real life. You will also see the traps, because this move has rules, and the rules are unforgiving. By the end, you will not just know the name, you will understand the actual logic behind it. Let us start with the simple problem this strategy was created to quietly solve in the first place. A Roth IRA is one of the best retirement accounts ever created for everyday American workers. You contribute money you have already paid tax on, and then it grows tax-free forever. When you retire, you pull it out, and the government does not touch a single dollar of it. No tax on the growth, no tax on the withdrawals, no required distributions during your lifetime either. For most people, that is the cleanest, calmest, most powerful retirement vehicle available in America. But there is a catch built into the rules, and it punishes people who earn higher incomes. Once your income crosses a certain limit, the IRS says you cannot contribute to a Roth directly. That sounds fair on the surface, but it creates a strange and quietly unfair situation underneath. Because the truly wealthy already have advisors who know exactly how to step around that limit. They do not break the law, they do not hide money, they simply use a legal side door. The side door is what people now call the Backdoor Roth IRA contribution strategy. Here is the heart of how it actually works once you strip away the complicated language. You contribute money to a traditional IRA first, which has no income limit on contributions itself. Then, shortly after, you convert that traditional IRA balance into a Roth IRA on purpose. The conversion step is completely legal, and the IRS has acknowledged it for many years now. You end up with money inside a Roth even though your income was technically too high. That is the entire mechanic, and once you see it, you cannot unsee how clever it really is. Now let us talk about why this matters emotionally, not just mathematically, for people like you. Many high earners feel a quiet shame about not having more saved, despite making good money. They look at their paychecks and wonder why their net worth does not match their income. The answer is almost always tax drag, lifestyle creep, and a lack of structural account planning. A backdoor Roth does not fix lifestyle creep, but it absolutely attacks the tax drag problem. Imagine putting $7,000 in this year, and again next year, and again the year after. Over 20 years, that becomes a meaningful pile of money, growing entirely outside the taxman's reach. If it earns a reasonable return, the tax savings alone could fund years of your retirement spending. That is not hype, that is just compounding, doing its quiet job inside a tax-free wrapper. Now let me name something honestly, because this channel does not pretend money decisions are easy. If you are drowning in credit card debt, this is not the first move you should make. If you have no emergency fund, this is not the first move you should make either. If your employer match is sitting on the table untouched, grab that match before anything else. The backdoor Roth is a layer, not a foundation, and layers go on top of solid ground. But once your basics are handled, this move becomes one of the smartest steps available to you. Let me walk you through a simple real-life example so this stops feeling abstract and theoretical. Imagine someone named David, an engineer earning around $200,000 per year in Texas. David is married, has a mortgage, 2 kids, a car loan, and a decent 401k. He maxes out his 401k each year, getting the full employer match, which is great. but his income is too high to contribute directly to a Roth IRA the normal way. For years, David assumed Roth accounts were simply not available to people in his income bracket. So he put extra money into a regular brokerage account, paying tax on dividends every single year. Then a colleague mentioned the backdoor Roth, and David finally looked at the actual rules himself. He realized he could legally put $7,000 per year into a Roth through this method. His wife could do the same, doubling the household contribution to $14,000 annually. Over 20 years, with steady market returns, that becomes a substantial, completely tax-free retirement pillar. David did not get richer overnight. He just stopped leaving free tax efficiency on the table. That is the entire emotional shift this strategy creates for people who finally understand it correctly. Now, before you rush to do this tomorrow, you have to know about something called the pro-rata rule. This is where many well-meaning people accidentally trip themselves and end up with a tax surprise. The IRS looks at all of your traditional IRA balances combined, not just the new contribution. If we already have pre-tax money sitting in any traditional IRA, the conversion gets messy fast. A portion of your conversion may become taxable, even though you thought it would all be clean. This is why people with old rollover IRAs need to think carefully before doing a backdoor Roth. Sometimes the right move is to roll that old IRA into your current employer's 401k. That clears the slate and lets the backdoor Roth work cleanly without the pro-rata complication. If your plan did not allow incoming rollovers, you may need a different strategy entirely instead. This is the kind of nuance that separates surface advice from real, grounded financial decision-making. Run the numbers first before you move any money, because mistakes here can cost real dollars. Now let me reframe something deeper, because this is not really a video about a tax loophole. This is a video about why some Americans build wealth quietly, while others stay stuck running. The wealthy are not smarter than you, they just have access to better default information sooner. They sit across from advisors who casually mention strategies you have never even heard whispered about. They are not doing anything illegal, they are simply using the rulebook the rest of us ignore. When you finally learn these moves, something shifts inside you, and it is not just financial. You stop feeling like the system is rigged against you in some vague, unbeatable way. You start seeing that the system has rules, and the rules can be used by anyone willing. That mindset shift is worth more than any single contribution you will ever make in your life. It moves you from financial victim to financial participant, which is a completely different identity. Let me give you another example, because patterns sink deeper when you see them more than once. Imagine a couple named Lisa and Mark, both in their early 40s, living in suburban Illinois. Combined, they earn about $300,000, which sounds great until you see their lifestyle. They have a big house, 2 financed SUVs, private school tuition, and almost no liquid savings. They feel financially anxious, even though their neighbors assume they are doing wonderfully on paper. When they finally sit down with a planner, the truth becomes uncomfortable, but also strangely freeing. Their income is high, their tax bill is high, and their long-term wealth building is thin. The planner introduces several moves, and the backdoor Roth becomes one of them alongside spending changes. For the first time in years, Lisa and Mark feel like they have a real plan, not just panic. Notice what shifted. It was not the strategy alone, it was the structure plus the clarity together. Money calm rarely comes from earning more, it comes from knowing exactly what your dollars are doing. Let me name something honestly that hustle culture and loud finance influencers will almost never tell you. A backdoor Roth will not save someone whose lifestyle quietly eats every raise they ever receive. A backdoor Roth will not protect someone using debt to perform a version of success online. A backdoor Roth will not heal the emotional wound that drives compulsive spending in the first place. Tax strategy is powerful, but it sits on top of behavior, and behavior is always the foundation. If you find yourself buying things to feel important, that is not a tax problem to solve. That is a self-worth conversation wearing the costume of a shopping habit, and it costs everything. Healthy spending is intentional, chosen, and aligned with the life you actually want to be living. Emotional spending is relief with a receipt, and the relief never lasts longer than the next week. You can run a backdoor Roth perfectly and still end up financially stressed if behavior never changes. That is the deeper truth most personal finance content carefully avoids saying directly out loud to you. Now let me give you some exact phrases you can use when financial pressure shows up in life. When a salesperson pushes you toward a bigger purchase than you planned, simply say, "That does not fit my plan." When a friend invites you into a lifestyle you cannot sustain, gently say, "Not right now." When someone questions why you delay a purchase, calmly say, "I am choosing long-term freedom." When you feel emotional urgency to buy something, pause and tell yourself, "I can wait." When a financial product feels rushed, look the person in the eye and say, "Run the numbers first." These phrases are not slogans, they are small fences that protect your decisions from social pressure. You do not have to justify your financial boundaries, and you do not owe anyone a long explanation. Say less when people push, because confident calmness rarely needs a paragraph to defend itself well. That is a nonverbal financial discipline most adults never learn until far later in life. Now let us go back to the backdoor Roth and talk about how to actually execute it cleanly. First, open a traditional IRA at a brokerage if you do not already have one available. Second, open a Roth IRA at the same brokerage, which keeps the paperwork much simpler later. Third, contribute the annual limit to the traditional IRA using money you have already paid tax on. Do not deduct that contribution on your tax return because that creates a tracking nightmare later. Fourth, wait a short time, then convert the full traditional IRA balance into the Roth IRA. Fifth, when tax time comes, file the form that documents your non-deductible contribution and conversion clearly. That form is how the IRS tracks that you already paid tax on the money you contributed. Without that form, you risk being taxed twice, and that defeats the entire point of this move. This is exactly why people say the backdoor Roth is simple in concept, but careful in execution. Now here is an advanced nuance that almost nobody talks about, and it is worth understanding well. Not every person who can do a backdoor Roth actually should, and that surprises a lot of people. If you are close to retirement, in a very high tax bracket, with no other Roth assets, the math may favor different priorities. If your income will drop substantially in retirement, traditional pre-tax contributions might serve you better overall. Sometimes the best money decision is psychological first and mathematical second, which sounds odd, but matters. A Roth gives you tax certainty, and certainty has emotional value beyond the spreadsheet calculation alone. Many retirees say the calmest money they own is the money the government cannot tax anymore. That peace is real, and peace is part of wealth, even if no calculator measures it directly. So weigh both the numbers and the feeling, because retirement is lived, not just calculated on paper. Let me also clearly separate healthy financial caution from fear-based financial caution, because they look similar. Healthy caution says, "I want to understand this strategy before I move money into it carefully." Fear-based caution says, "I will never touch this because it sounds complicated and somehow scary." Healthy caution leads to learning, then action, then refinement, then long-term compounding wealth slowly. Fear-based caution leads to inaction, then regret, then watching others build what you could have built. Both feel safe in the moment, but only one of them is actually safe over decades. The backdoor Roth, when used correctly, is not a risky move, it is a structural one. It is not gambling, it is not speculation, it is simply choosing where your money lives legally. You are not chasing returns, you are choosing tax treatment, and tax treatment is one of the few financial variables you can fully control. Markets you cannot control, inflation you cannot control, but account structure you absolutely can control today. That is why this strategy matters, even though it is quiet and unglamorous and almost boring sounding. Boring, repeated for 30 years, beats exciting almost every single time in real personal finance. Now let me say something gentle, because some of you are listening with a tight chest right now. Maybe you are realizing nobody ever told you about this, and that feels like a small grief. Maybe you are decades into your career, and you are calculating what you might have missed. Please hear this clearly. The most important year to start using this strategy is the year you learn it. You cannot recover the past, but you can absolutely shape every future contribution from this point forward. Wealth is not built by people who started perfectly, it is built by people who started anyway. The shame of not knowing earlier is not yours to carry. The system did not teach you. Your job now is simply to take the information and use it calmly and consistently, year after year. That is what the wealthy actually do. They just keep showing up to the same boring strategies. They do not feel guilty about past gaps. They focus entirely on the next correct move available. You can do the same starting today, and a decade from now you will be quietly grateful. Let me close with the deeper truth this strategy is really pointing toward, underneath all the technical detail. Money is not just numbers, money is structure, behavior, identity, fear, hope, and decision-making combined. The backdoor Roth is a small example of a much larger pattern that runs through every wealthy life. Wealthy people use rules, average earners ignore rules, and the gap between them grows quietly over time. When you start using the rules, you stop feeling powerless, and that emotional shift changes everything else. You begin to question other defaults, like car payments, lifestyle inflation, debt habits, and housing decisions. You start running the numbers before signing things, instead of signing first and regretting later quietly. You stop comparing yourself to neighbors who may be one job loss away from financial collapse. You start measuring your life by cash flow, flexibility, options, and freedom, not by visible status symbols. That is the real transformation this kind of knowledge offers, far beyond the contribution limits and forms. You become harder to mislead, harder to pressure, harder to rush, and harder to manipulate financially. You become someone who looks at money with calm clarity, not panic, not shame, not avoidance. That is the version of you the wealthy quietly assume you will never become because most do not. But you are watching this, which means you are already not most, and that matters more than you think. Take the backdoor Roth seriously if your situation supports it, and ignore it if it does not. Either way, take the mindset seriously, because the mindset will outlast any single tax strategy you use. If this gave you clarity, leave a short comment with the one idea that hit you hardest. Subscribe if you want more calm, intelligent breakdowns of the moves the wealthy actually use quietly. Share this with one person who keeps saying they feel behind because they probably just need information. And remember this simple truth. The system has rules, and the rules are available to anyone paying attention. You are paying attention, and that is exactly where every quiet financial transformation begins for real.